I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 78 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Today we meet to resume our study of Canada's clean energy plans in the context of North American energy transformation. Since today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of members and witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Additionally, screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. In accordance with our routine motion, I am informing the committee that all remote participants have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. You'll notice me using these two cards. Yellow is a 30-second warning. Red is time's up. It's like a stop sign. So be conscious of that, but I will try not to interrupt you in mid-sentence so you can finish off your last thought. I will now like to welcome the witnesses who are with us this afternoon. From the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Matthew Holmes, Senior Vice President, Policy and Government Relations, and joining him, Bryan Detchou, Senior Director, Natural Resources, Environment and Sustainability. From the Canadian Climate Institute, Jonathan Arnold, Research Director, Clean Growth, by video conference. From the Canadian Labour Congress, President B. Brusque, thank you. And Alex Callahan, National Director, Health, Safety and Environment, by video conference. From the Macdonald Laurier Institute, Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot, Senior Fellow and Director, Energy, Natural Resources and Environment Program, also by video conference. From the Net Zero Advisory Body, Dan Wicklum, Co-Chair, by video conference. And from Unifor Quebec, Daniel Cloutier, Quebec Director, by video conference. Thank you for taking the time today to appear. We will begin with the Canadian Chamber of Commons. You have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Holmes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honourable members, it's a pleasure to join you today for this discussion. My colleague and I are here on behalf of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to speak to the steps necessary for Canada to meet the challenges and opportunities presented by the broader North American energy transformation. Getting the clean energy transition right is important to our members, not only do we represent the sectors and businesses most involved in this transformation, but also the communities across this country which they support. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce represents 200,000 Canadian businesses through more than 400 local, provincial, territorial chambers of commerce and boards of trade, and over 120 trade associations. We represent members of all sizes of business in every sector of the economy across all regions of the country. First, let me emphasize that the Canadian Chamber and our members recognize the paramount importance of addressing climate change and meeting our net zero goals. Canadian businesses of all sizes from coast to coast to coast are committed to playing their part in the collective effort to combat climate change. With that said, our remarks will focus on what Canadian businesses need from the federal government to help Canada achieve its economic and environmental ambitions and position our nation as a leader in the global transition economy. Candidly, what businesses need can be summarized in 4 words: ambition, clarity, predictability, and efficacy. I will now share the time with my colleague Bryan Detchou.
Le Canada.
Canada does not lack ambition. We recognize and applaud the government's strong commitment to leading global initiatives to combat climate change. However, Canada can have all the ambition in the world, but only action gets things done. Unfortunately, Canada has earned a reputation as a country where big projects cannot be accomplished. We need to learn that working with the private sector is the only way to achieve our shared net zero emissions goals. The global shift to net zero consumption is well underway. Canada's ability to compete and succeed requires adaptability, speed, and effective coordination from both government and industry. Canadian companies will struggle to keep up with the pace of this transition if they don't have the necessary infrastructure, regulatory frameworks, and funding programs in place in time.
Canada's lack of clarity, predictability, and efficacy in its approach to environmental policies represents the foremost challenge in achieving the nation's net zero commitments. These issues impede the ability of businesses to make informed decisions, plan for the long term, and allocate resources effectively. They also discourage the foreign direct investment and innovation our economy needs. The urgency of 2030 and 2050 net zero target requires that the federal government prioritize removing barriers that compromise competitiveness, delay projects approvals, and place redundant and overly onerous reporting requirements on businesses. Reducing permitting timelines to speed up the pace of investment and development of major projects. Accelerating the implementation of incentives for clean technology deployment and adaptation in Canada through investment tax credits, strategic finance, and targeted programming. Incentivize partnerships with Indigenous communities that advance decarbonization projects and supports economic reconciliation. Establishing a modernized, efficient regulatory framework that responds to the needs of industry and respects the jurisdictions of both the federal government and the provinces. Acknowledging regional differences as geographic, economic, and demographic diversity necessitates different policies, practices, and investments. Lastly, I understand the committee continues to examine the competitive challenges the United States Inflation Reduction Act poses for Canada in attracting investment for a domestic net zero economy. While Canada cannot directly rival the U.S. in terms of financial resources, nonetheless, direct financial support, investment, and incentives remain an indispensable part of the policy mix. What Canada must also strive for is to turn its regulatory framework and operational efficiency into a competitive strength that will allow us to spearhead the North American energy transformation. En procédant à ces
By making these adjustments, the Canadian government can restore the confidence Canadian businesses need to make long-term investment decisions, introduce innovative net zero technologies, and attract much-needed investment to our country, accelerating our progress towards our net zero ambitions. Thank you for your attention.